So thank you very much to all of you for attending this panel after all the sessions that you have been through already. I know that we have a little bit of delay, so I'll try to skip most of the introductions and we'll jump directly into the topic that we are willing to discuss now on acceleration of renewables in Europe and optimizing investment and financing. We have already been discussing about the opportunities, the appetite, and the challenges that we all see in the energy space, in particular in Europe and in Spain, in Italy. And one important thing that has been discussed lately is the huge penetration from renewables that we are seeing, the ambitious plans that the government is pursuing, also the investors, all the appetite that we see from the access and connection permits that are approved this January. But one important thing is how to accommodate all this electricity, how to integrate it in the system, how flexibility is going to be needed, and how the demand will appear. So jumping into the specific challenges that we see and that has been already anticipating, I would like to ask to some of the panel members, to Miguel Ángel, from the financing perspective, being part of Triodos, how do you see the challenges for financing renewables as of today? How do you see these challenges might be solved, and whether storage would have a role in all this integration of the renewables that are upcoming in the system?
Yeah, thank you. Well, basically from the lender's perspective, there are a few challenges. One of them is, of course, the power price uncertainty about the future, especially in countries in Spain, that could be seriously affected by cannibalization in the long term in PV plants. So I think it's one of the clear elements. Of course, one of the elements that could help to finance this, to deal with this uncertainty is PPA. Long-term with financial counterparties, so it's clear, but probably there is, of course, a lack of good investment grade off-takers, and at the same time, on the other side, from the investor side, some of them, of course, are more thinking that it's quite more profitable to go directly to the market. So there are a lot of conversation between lenders and investors, you can imagine. So what's the right balance between risk and between profit? One of the key elements is to manage this risk also is probably in the medium term the storage and the demand, the management of the electricity demand. Green hydrogen could play in the medium term, maybe in the long term, an important role to absorb the excess of energy. And of course interconnection with the rest of Europe. Second challenge that we are facing in general in Europe, especially in Spain, is the permitting side. As you also know, there are around 80 gigawatts that has the permits, but there is a clear deadline, June 2025, to get the final operating authorization. And it will be a real challenge, especially in the coming months, because we as lenders, when we have to decide to finance the project, you have to manage all the risks that don't get in this permit in June 2025. Of course, there are a lot of sponsors that hope that the government will extend this deadline, but if there is no clarity, it could be a problem. And linked to that, the lack of EPC contractors, because there are a lot of demand, but not enough EPC contractor with good financial to get it. And on top of that, of course, the current environment, the increase in the cost, the increase in the interest rates, it's also a challenge for finance.
Thank you, Miguel Ángel. So following on that question, well, I have been working in the market for more than 15 years, and we all know that the deployment of renewables has progressed quite a lot. But we have seen lately in price projections that some of us are doing that the penetration of solar PV and wind at the scale that we are seeing in the market without the needed demand, the electrification of end users and the electric vehicle that also will increase the need for electricity, or eventually the interconnection with other countries that we have discussed already, which is something that probably will not come at the time that is needed if we want to integrate the renewables. All this has somehow slowed down the situation in the M&A space, and this is something that I would like to touch upon with Sol to see how how you see the market, how you have seen the last months in terms of M&A activity. Do you think that is stopping a little bit? How do you think it might flourish again? And how do you see the activities in this area?
Yes, well, of course, I think we are in a challenging moment. Although that's a huge support from the government for renewables, we've seen a decrease in the M&A activity, both in development and operating assets in 2023 compared to the previous 2 years at least. And I would say this is mainly driven by two factors. One is the regulatory uncertainty, as Miguel Angel was mentioning, the deadline for the obtention of the exploitation authorization, which for most projects is June 25, which basically means that if you don't start building your project in the next 6 or 8 months, you probably won't achieve that COD by that deadline. This had created a stop in transactions of close to ready-to-build projects because long-term owners are not willing to buy projects and take that risk, and because sellers either cannot build by themselves or the same are not willing to take that risk. So I think that has created a stop in the transactions, and we'll probably wait until the extension is granted or not. I do believe it will be granted, but the question is when and for how long. And the other big driver, I would say, is the gap between the seller's expectations in price and buyers and the price that buyers can offer. Sellers' expectations have considerably gone down from what we were seeing last year, around 300, 350K from ready-to-build projects. Today, we are more in turn of 150, 200, some may say. But these prices have not gone down enough to meet buyers' purchase price. And these prices, the prices that buyers, long-term buyers especially, can pay, have also decreased, mainly also for a couple of factors, as Miguel Angel was saying, the increase in the interest rates, which results in lower leverage for the projects and therefore lower returns. The macroeconomic situation in general, that has made several players increase their cost of capitals. CapEx, although there has been a huge decrease in modules price, especially in the last month, there was a lot of noise around that. EPC prices are still not in pre-COVID levels. And it's not only price, it's also delivery times and lack of EPC companies to build all the projects in the market. And also power prices projections. We have gone considerably down in the first Q of this year, making PPA prices as well go down. And all of this together result, of course, in lower prices, which make like this gap between sellers' expectations and buyers' prices a problem to really go ahead with transactions. And last but not least, we're starting to see curtailment in several areas of Spain, which for those of us who have worked in countries such as Chile, we know how complicated curtailment could be. We are definitely late in assessing this problem, but of course, storage and batteries can be a definite solution for that. But for storage, as we've been discussing today, we need, there are some challenges that we're facing, one of them regulation and the other one how to finance it.
Thank you, Sol. So it seems that we are changing from a seller's market to a buyer's market as of today, and I would like to take the view as well on this from Guillermo from EDP.
Sure. So I would like to add that investment in this sector has always had its cycles. So I want to start with a positive message on the outlook, because the fundamentals of the market are very positive. So companies have Spain as a priority for investments because the cost of electricity for new PPAs in solar is cheaper than in any other place in Europe. So that is something to be taken into account to remind. Also, energy security is more a concern than ever. Electricity is the most efficient way to achieve the energy transition. So there is a number of fundamental factors which makes investors to focus activity also in Spain. But that is true that in the short term, so there are many challenges to achieve the investments that we are looking for. So the number of projects which have received the environmental permit in the last year is huge. So I remember the time 2 years ago where projects were sold based on having a grid connection. That was enough. didn't matter if the project was good or not. There were 100 gigas of projects with that, and that already had a price. Last year, projects were sold based on having the environmental permit, so that is more complicated to get, but still the value was really high, so that was the good moment for developers selling projects. So it was paid 300K per megawatt for a good project with environmental permits. And now, some other people have been mentioning the problems that we have to achieve the total development until ready to build, which should happen in the next few months. But also the project has to show they have a business case. So now it is not only about the project reaching ready to build, but investor has to put the money and to invest in a project in a very challenging context. So there is the inflation, which is no longer compensated by very high electricity prices. There are problems in the supply chains. So good luck if we want to install 60 gigas in the next year. It is almost impossible. So that is impossible. Then we also have a lower financing appetite. So the funds available in the market has been reduced in the last year. And finally, I would say that solar is starting to have problems with curtailment, cannibalization. So the levelized cost of energy is no longer the key metric to invest in solar. So you need to make the business case with all the parameters in the sector. So having said that, and I don't want to be extremely negative, but it is a reality that the amount of solar capacity under development, it's very complicated to integrate into the system in the next 1 or 2 years. So I think that regulators should start focusing on some difficult stuff. So number one would be to invest in grids, but seriously, that is not solving the short-term problem, but that is necessary for the long term. Second, I think it is a priority to start focusing on electrification. So that is not happening. So we have more potential than any other country because electricity cost is cheaper from solar. So that is necessary. So we need to electrify other sectors in the energy sector to reduce CO2 emissions. And number third, I would say that we need flexibility. So new solar must have some kind of flexibility. So we're talking about batteries in the previous panel. Some people defend there is a business case for batteries if you have the proper information. But don't forget, this is a capex-intensive industry. So people will not put the money based on a forecast of electricity in a complex system that nobody understands in general. So I had the opinion, and that is something we support from EDPR, that energy storage, namely batteries, should be promoted with better regulation. So they need capacity payments. They need some kind of support. But I think that if we want to achieve to install all the megawatts which are under development right now, we really need some kind of support for battery storage.
Thank you very much, Guillermo, and you touched some of the points that we would like to discuss now. And I'd like to start about the regulation and the situation of the market for energy storage here in Spain. So, fortunately, I have been advising as a market advisor to Avival, one of the Spanish storage association that has been growing a lot lately, and we have been actually fighting or presenting the business case for batteries to the authorities here in Spain and also elevating that message to Europe, because as has been mentioned here, there is the need to create a clear business case for batteries in the Spanish context. 4 years ago, storage batteries were not even a market agent. We have progressed a lot, so now batteries can have a business case with arbitrage, participating in the ancillary services, and of course the numbers, it depends on the assumptions that you are putting there in the model. But we need something else, mainly from the financing perspective. I tend to agree that there is the need to have some sort of stability in the revenue stream. That is when the capacity permit might come or any other sort of flexibility remuneration scheme. The truth is that here we are not talking about remunerating the batteries as a subsidy. So capacity market is something that exists elsewhere in the world. It's something that is remunerating firm capacity when it is needed. So far in Spain, we have not had that problem because we have a lot of overcapacity. We have had a lot of CCGTs, the nuclear fleet, but we are aiming at decommissioning some of these conventional assets. We are aiming at decommissioning the nuclear fleet, and in that case, there has been already studies that pointed out that there is the need of some additional firm capacity, and batteries might be there to supply that additional capacity. There has been the draft capacity market proposal in 2021 that is going to be retrieved quite promptly. We have been discussing with the ministry, and we have the expectation of having a new draft that will start off all the process with the DG Ener, with the DG Com to be approved probably in half a year, we hope so. But of course we need something else, and we were talking about the flexibility remuneration scheme. I would like to highlight what David Post mentioned in the previous panel, because I think that is something that is very good news. We are all aware that it's not possible to integrate the solar or the renewables that we are aiming at deploying. We have the new PNIEC, which from the government perspective is very ambitious. It's great to have this wish list, but it's not possible to have this interconnection with France as expected in this PNIEC because it has not even started. It's not possible to have 5.5 million of electric vehicles by 2030 because that would mean that every vehicle that is bought from now on is electric vehicle, and this is not what will happen in Spain. Of course, electrifying the industry is definitely the way to go, but this will take some time. So I think that the regulator and the authorities are working hard, but of course all this will take some time. And we are not even expecting either that the solar PV will be deployed at the level that we are expecting here. So all these projects that we have mentioned will not be up and running by 2025, 2026. The mortality rate most likely will be significant because of the challenges in the supply chain, the challenges in financing, and a lot of people that will not have the numbers because some of these projects are not the best ones probably. I would like to give the floor related to the market and the regulation of storage in Spain and how your company is positioning potentially to include this as part of your portfolio of projects, to Fernando from OPD first.
Thank you very much. Yeah, our company, as you know, we have currently between construction and operating assets around 1.3 gigawatts here in Spain, and we're basically following what we have seen in other markets. So I think now is the right time to start speaking about batteries coming to the Spanish market. Of course, there are some challenges because you know that we have some curtailment, we have some cannibalization, we have some hours during the day with prices quite low. So we need, as managers of this type of assets, it's not like the old days that you have the asset and it was easy to earn money. Now you have to focus and you have to put battery storage in your generation assets, because this way you can improve the cash flows of your assets and protect yourself. Every time, as you know, most of the players are more focusing on providing energy 24/7. Okay, so it's not only the battery storage which is essential, but it's also hybridization of your connection points to put more capacity and use that capacity during the 24 hours. And that's mainly what is the aim of OPD these days, is to focus on that approach. Okay, so what we're doing, and we're working, towards having a very well, understanding of how the market will be in Spain. It's true that currently there is a market of ancillary services. You can earn some money, but unfortunately, we understand very well the wholesale market arbitrage. But I think the market needs to have, and I think the government is working towards that, to have a capacity payment in place. So that will give a lot of information and a lot of security to the cash flows in the future years, and this will also allow lenders to understand how the cash flows would be and how to lend to increase, the business, It's also very important that, as we have seen in many markets, the batteries is very relevant, and we have seen that the first movers in the market, the first companies that we saw in California, that we saw in ERCOT, that we have seen, for example, in Chile or UK, they have been, the first movers have been very successful in capturing the best cash flows in the industry, because at the end, once more investment is coming to the market, more storage, you have to share those type of cash flows with other players. So it's very relevant to be focused, to do the proper permitting, to have the right to put the batteries in place once the market is ready to go, and that is basically what we're aiming at our company.
Thank you very much, and that's a very good point, because as you all know, the batteries will mainly give services to the system operator, and those services, the size of this market is much more smaller than the size of the day-ahead market that was the one where we all were playing in the past. So it is very important to have this front runner, or to be able to capture the revenues that will be there in those markets, because as more batteries enter to compete for those revenues, the cannibalization effect will be even sharper than what we have seen in solar PV. And in that sense, I would like to ask Eugenio, as VP, being one of the players that in the UK, for instance, has been very active in the development of storage, how do you see yourself position in the market, and how do you see to anticipate to eventually some additional regulatory changes that might definitely make this market to flourish in Spain?
Yes, from Lightsource BP, we have a very similar position that Fernando explained for OPD. We are similar companies. But the main point that differentiates us is that our home market is the UK, where there is such an historic success in terms of batteries, especially in standalone batteries. And what we're trying to do in other geographies like Spain is establish some kind of pilot projects in order to make them a representative of what can happen on a larger utility scale project, and take conclusions on that. So we are focusing I'm thinking specifically on the battery storage standalone, because it's more complexity on the revenue stream on that rather than the hybridization, and we believe that if we hopefully have good results on those pilot projects, we will be able to create economies of scale and not being pioneers, but being front runners in the race that Chema was mentioning, in order to be able to get as much benefit as possible from being there from the very first moment. No? However, we at the same time as we are becoming bigger, we are more prudent or more cautious in terms of where we spend our money. No? And it's a challenge for us internally. The ones that we are interested in developing this new batteries technology inside a house that is traditionally PV, how to convince our investment committee that we should spend money on that, and what kind of assumptions we should consider. There have been a couple of opportunities coming here in Spain regarding batteries standalone, and it has been tremendously challenging to make the numbers work, because our initial point is being very, very prudent. And it's difficult to make that way the returns profitable enough. So that's the point. Hopefully in the next 1 year, 2 years, we will have much more visibility and be able to develop more rapidly the activity in the batteries.
Thank you, Eugenio. Do you want to
I wanted to thank you very much, Eugenio. I think we have a very good years to come. I think most of the companies are doing a great job understanding how the market can be, how the cash flows will behave in the future. There's some uncertainty yet because the regulation has not been approved yet. But I think that in the 2 years we have an exciting period and this will come to Spain for sure, as we have seen in other markets. So.
Thank you both. So the next point that I would like to discuss, fortunately now in Alantra I have kind of two hats, my traditional market advisory, and now I'm also entering into the investment banking space, so I'm in close contact with infrastructure funds, different type of investors that are looking at renewables as a whole, but they are more and more concerned about the projects, their quality. Also they are looking for some sort of diversification between geographies, also between technologies, and when they have portfolios that are heavily weighted with PV, they are looking also for a business case for batteries in order to be kind of a natural hedge, as we have been discussing in the previous panel. If PV goes really, really bad, it will mean that the business case for batteries will look quite nice. So in that sense, I would like to give the floor to Alfonso now, on how do you see the market from Foresight perspective in terms of investing in PV, how storage might serve as this sort of natural hedging, and what do you need from your end to actually deploy capital there?
Yeah, I think as Sol was mentioning before, we all need to acknowledge that the macroeconomic environment has materially changed from 1 or 2 years ago. Central banks worldwide have been increasing very materially interest rate. So this means that there is less money available, and the money available that there is, it's considerably more expensive. So investors will need to be or will be more selective in where to invest the capitals, as my colleagues were mentioning before. This will have a few impacts. First, for sure, as Sol was mentioning before, prices for development has started to go down, but will need to go down further to adapt to this higher interest rate environment. Second, which is kind of related, I think there will be some kind of natural selection among current projects under development, and those who are less economically efficient or that are not totally viable may not go further and will not be built. And third, and I think it's also important, when you are facing this kind of high interest rate environment, projects yielding lower than you will expect, investors need to find new ways to add value to shareholders. And I think in this way to find more value is where there is also a very interesting market opportunity, and where we will see a lot of investment in the coming months and year in some type of projects that were not developed in the past, at least in Spain, as battery, which have been discussed in a lot of detail in this panel, or biogases, or hybridization of wind and solar, even hydrogen, which will take a little bit more, but we believe it will be here sooner rather than later. So all in all, there is a challenging environment. People, and particularly investment fund, will look a lot in where they invest every euro, more than what they have been doing in the past. But also coming with this, I think people will start looking into different kind of projects, and this, I believe it's in these sectors rather than the playing solar and wind, which of course will continue their development, where we will see more opportunities in the near future.
Thank you very much, Alfonso. And Álvaro, what is your view as well on the appetite from different type of investors, how they see traditional renewables and how they might be willing to enter into these new technologies?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'll move a bit more to the financing side, and maybe some lessons learned from other countries which has suffered more on the curtailment, which was mentioned before, and due to that maybe have some more visibility than Spain regarding to how to tackle it through storage. Well, we basically see two main challenges here. First of them is related to the PPAs, to the how to deal with the off-takers, right? When you have curtailment, batteries will be like a good solution, but sometimes we find sponsors or developers, like with all their homework done, but in the need of dealing with the off-takers, and we're not seeing some of the tier one off-takers as flexible as they should be regarding to how to understand the new PPAs when you include a collocated battery to a solar, right? Obviously, batteries should help or should contribute reducing the curtailment, and something smart to do should be, okay, if you take the peak production hours, let's use them to charge a battery, and then you discharge them to a much higher price during night hours, right? Well, that may come to Spain rather soon once there's some visibility and regulation, and abroad we've seen that not off-takers are as flexible, and it's been a handicap for bringing financing into the projects. Okay. Second one is unfortunately for let's say local or small developers, but with utility scale projects being developed in the last years, what we've seen is that well, we're receiving good proposals from different I would say both kind of lenders, banks and also alternative lenders. But at the end, with all the homework done, most of their proposals are subject to changing control. So they won't finance local. I mean, you need to take into account that if a project was born to be just solar, once you introduce the capex for batteries, that might mean that you are multiplying by 1.5, 2 point something, the capex. And even if it's a private finance, if there's not an institutional finance sponsor behind, there will no be financing as of today. So at the end of the day, that means that we are facing double processes. We start with financing processes that end up with M&A process in parallel, but most of the times ends with a majority sale. I mean, the institutional sponsor needs to be the majority shareholder, and obviously that's an opportunity for some of the guys in the panel. Yeah, maybe those are two big challenges that we see now.
Thank you, Boris, and I totally agree with that. And I think that we are now in a situation in which, because of the need of the system to add some flexibility to integrate renewables, there is a lot of steering exercise with the finance institutions, with different lenders, to make them understand how the business case will look like, to understand not only the arbitrage, which is kind of the plain vanilla revenue from a battery that you can assess, but also how the behavior of ancillary services will be, how is the situation with other revenues, in order to make this happen, because otherwise the challenge is in order to deploy these new technologies that in the end are needed to make viable the whole fleet and the decarbonization of the system. Otherwise, we will not reach the overall European targets, and this is not something that we can put at risk. It's not something that will happen in my view. So I think that the last point for this panel, and we'll give the floor to Adrian, is with all these new technologies, the integration of storage, renewables in the system, of course there are a lot of new companies, a lot of R&D development that are kind of enabling to integrate all this into the system, because it's not something that is straightforward. You need to integrate different technologies with the system operator, with the market operator, also to add flexibility in how to use these sources of generation. Can you give us your view on how these new companies are entering into the system, and how do you see the space for kind of this venture space for companies that in the end might be upscaling their value proposition and be expanded worldwide?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Shema. You're completely right, and I think we share that across the panelists. For the energy transition to be successful, there is a tremendous amount of innovation which is required. We need to solve for storage, we need to solve for batteries, hydrogen, electrification was mentioned. Our strong belief is that a lot of this innovation will come from small players, will come from local players, people that understand their market very well, that are agile, can take fast decision makings. And they need capital. They need capital, they need support in their growth. They need coaching to be able to be establishing themselves and then growing. And the good news, as far as we can tell, is that the capital providers are, bit by bit, it's a transition, moving from investing purely into project to investing into platforms. And that's a transition. Those two worlds need to come together, and it's not easy. I think it's incumbent on all of us in this industry to bridge that gap, for the entrepreneurs to structure their ideas, structure their company in a way that's investable, but also for the investment community to be there, supportive, taking a risk, and helping entrepreneurs, coaching them, helping them through tough times. And I think that's super important for the energy transition to be successful. And to end on a positive note, I also think it's an amazing opportunity for people in our industry that want to take that leap and move into a more entrepreneurial setup. I think there is plenty to do out there.
Thank you, Adrian. And well, I think it has been a very interesting panel. I will just drop up a few ideas. The first one is that I think that we all agree that the decarbonization, to integrate all the renewables, that definitely we have the resources here in Spain. We have a lot of solar, a lot of wind. We are endowed with a lot of renewable energy resources, but we need to integrate them in the system. The electrification goes at a different pace, probably, compared to the deployment of renewables. The development of huge infrastructure to integrate our resources and to export them outside Spain eventually, if that is the idea, which I tend to think that probably we should take advantage of that here in-house, but it's something that will take time as well. And the transport and the industry, of course, will be electrified, and they will be adding some other sources of energy like green hydrogen, but again, this is not something that can be deployed at the pace at which we are expecting to have 40 gigawatts on the system of PV, for instance. So I think that batteries are a technology that is proven, a technology that has been deployed elsewhere that can allow the system to integrate this capacity. We need some regulation to be fine-tuned, probably more visibility on some revenues, but the authorities are working on that, and I think that we are closer to where we should be in order to stand the investment. And I think that the first movers are the ones that, when they have the projects ready, when these markets are available, will capture the significant returns that can give. And the last point, probably to highlight this innovation that in the end will be needed in order to enable the whole transition, not only on the generation side, but also at the consumption and the flexibility end, which I think is very, very relevant for this decarbonization. So thank you very much for your contribution. It has been a pleasure to moderate the panel, and hope to chat afterwards with all of you in case you have further questions.